Hello everyone, welcome to episode 43 of Berry Fun Adventures. My name is Tonya and I'm coming to you from southeast Minnesota, where my family and I run a fruit farm called Firefly Berries, and where I dye my naturally dyed yarn line, Berry Fun Yarns. So hello, welcome. If you are new to the channel, welcome. Thanks for checking my channel out. And if you are a returning viewer, thanks so much for coming back. It's great to see you again. So it has only been about 2 weeks since I came to you last, so regularly scheduled podcast, but I have done quite a bit of making since I came to you last because if you recall, if you watched episode 42, I went on a knitting retreat. Now, the Minnesota weather almost did not cooperate because we got a big snowstorm the Friday we were supposed to leave. And although the conditions weren't quite blizzard, they weren't super great for driving. So I ended up not going on Friday. I didn't go until Saturday, which I think was the 13th of January. So today is the 25th of January. So not quite 2 weeks later. It is a Thursday. And so I went up on Saturday morning, and then I stayed until Sunday afternoon till about 2 o'clock or so, and then I came home. But I did get quite a bit finished. In fact, you will see I finished my Sonray sweater. So we'll start right there. This is the Sonray sweater by Jennifer Steingass, and you'll see if you know this pattern, I have modified it. So if you've been around a while, you've heard this before, but if you have not, let me just remind you. So I discovered when I do, I think it's all the time, but I don't do yoke sweaters very often. But my row gauge is generally a lot different than the recommended gauge in most patterns. So I tend to have much longer stitches than what the pattern says. So that was the case for me in this pattern. So I was getting the recommended stitch gauge. However, my row gauge was quite different. And because of that, my yoke depth was getting way too deep for the size that I was making. Now, let me stand up a little bit. You can see it's pretty good right now. It's not too deep of a yoke. It fits pretty good. And how I figured out I needed to stop was the pattern. Jennifer Steingass has really excellent patterns. And she actually had a schematic where it told me the yoke depth for my size. So if you're making a pattern that is a yoke sweater, so if you make it around and around, it's not a raglan or a drop sleeve, if that's the style of it, pay attention to whether or not the designer has a schematic, because it can really save you some heartache in the end. So the fact that she had that really helped me, because then I knew if everything else pretty much was working, that was where I needed to split for my sleeves. So what I ended up doing, I don't think you can tell. I might put a picture of the pattern up here side by side so you can see it. But I stopped the patterning up on the yoke a tad bit early. I can't remember how many rows that I omitted, but then I just sort of, I duplicate stitched in over the top of my gray to kind of fade it in. If I had been thinking about it prematurely, I probably would have not done these little bits here. I would have just done this. It looks sort of like a feather around the edge, and I would have just left it at that. But in hindsight, it's 2020. I didn't realize until I got to that point when I measured how far I was in my yoke. So I did modify that by not doing as much. And then I decided the pattern actually for the sleeve is it has the decreases, but then it goes straight here. There's not this long ribbing, and it has kind of, I think, just a curled stockinette edge. And if there is a ribbing, it's very minimal. I'm pretty sure it's just it's just like a rolled edging. And the color work goes all the way to the sleeve end. And I decided that for me and my functionality of how I was going to wear it, cooking a lot, that sort of thing, I didn't like the dangly sleeves. I really liked the cuff sleeve. So I decided to just do the first 17 rows of the sleeve color work, and then I did 3 inches of a knit 1 purl 1 rib, just like up here. Same with the bottom. It was supposed to have a curled edge that was just, no, it wasn't. I take that back. It was supposed to be 1 inch of ribbing, knit 1 purl 1, and I really like a thicker edge. In fact, looking at it now, if I were to make it again, I would make a bigger neckline here, a little, maybe 2 inches instead of just 1. So making the, not only would I make the neckline a little bit thicker, a little bit bigger than the 1 inch, I would also make it a little bit closer, a little bit smaller, because for me, I don't have very broad shoulders. So I feel like it's kind of wider than I'd like. But other than that, I really love how the pattern turned out. And, you know, it's not so wide that it's falling off. It's just that I got my hair cut recently, and, you know, my neck gets kind of cold, especially, you know, in the winter when you're wearing it. So that's just the minor changes I would make. But I really liked it. The pattern was well written. The knitting was really fun. You know, I did this top bit quite quickly. It was the straight stockinette that took me forever. And as far as yarn, the gray yarn is Lavender Loon Roan Sport. It is her mill spun, so it is a sport weight mill spun. And then the colored is actually a Crazy Zauber ball that is fingering weight, but I held it double with some lace weight pink mohair. So I get that nice color change without having to change colors at all. So I do like how I decided to hold that. It's a nice color change without having to do much work. So that was my first finished object. And then the other project I finished, actually I finished it the Friday. I was supposed to go on my retreat, and it didn't work out, but I was all packed up and I had planned to do that. So I pretty much just plopped down by the fireplace downstairs and I knit most of the day. In fact, my lovely husband was so sweet that night. He said, when it was time for dinner, he's like, well, you're supposed to be on retreat, so I'll be your short order cook and just tell me what you want for dinner. So I think he made fish and fries that night, or fish and chips if you're from the UK. That's how you'd say it. But so he made that for us, and it was really yummy, and I could just keep knitting. But I finished these that night. These are my Just Because socks. And it is blowing out a bit, the color. This is a little more accurate. The weather here today is super dreary. So we had winter for like a total of, I don't know, maybe 10 days. And now it has turned into what my 12-year-old and I are calling sprinter, which is it spring? Is it winter? What season is it? We don't know. But it's in the 30s, and it's supposed to be in the 40s Fahrenheit next week, which is really warm for us for January and early February. That's more of like a late, probably more into late February, March time frame. So who knows? But it's very dreary and foggy today because all of the snow is melting, making the air, you know, the ground is colder. And so anyway, we got fog everywhere. So anyway, the lighting is a little crazy, even with my light on in here. But these are great. If you recall, this is my own pattern. It is a broken rib of sorts, and it is in my project page. It is a 8 round repeat. 2 rounds you knit straight, and then for 1 round you knit, is it 8? 6 round repeat. Sorry, I counted wrong in my head. But it's 2 rounds of knit, 1 round of purl 3, knit 1, 2 more rounds of knit, and then a round of knit 3, purl 1. So it's the opposite. But I have not worn them yet. I've been holding off to show you. But the main color is in Julie Aslin Nomad Sock, and it is so squishy. Like, even look at the back. the coloring. It's kind of hard to see, but it is so beautiful and it feels so nice. I have not blocked them, but I don't typically block my socks until I wear them. That's kind of how they get blocked, but I'm looking forward to wearing these. So that is 2 of my 2023 projects that I got off the needles. And then what was the 4th one? I can't remember. Let me look really quick. So after I finished those 2, I also decided that I was going to frog something that I was taking in, a project that I was taking into 2024 from 2023. So let me take a look here. Oh, so let's, if you recall in the last episode, if you have been here before, and if not, go back and watch that episode and you can see all my chatter about making goals and finishing. We're having the Finish More in 2024 make-along, where I'm encouraging everyone to finish the projects that we took into 2024 from previous years. So at the beginning of the year, I finished my favorite blanket and my Advent socks from the year before. And then I finished the Just Because socks and this sweater. So that was 4. I finished 4 projects already in this new year, the first 3 weeks. And then I decided that I was going to frog some projects. So I was taking a look at what I brought into the new year and what I wanted to knit on, because I was thinking, I need to work on them a little each day, right? I said last time that I was going to work on something from previous years for 30 minutes every day. Well, I decided that I was going to frog my Sophie shawl. Now, do I still have it here? Let me see. I may not have frogged it. Oh, no, I did frog it, and I was going to start something else, and then I switched. I changed my mind already. But it was out of this BFL Aran blue overalls colorway from berryfunyarns. And if you have been around a while, you may recall that I cast it on last fall when my dear knitting friend passed away. Now, she loved blue, and it was sort of it was therapy. It was how I grieved. I thought I was going to finish it, and it would be like having a physical something of Debbie close to me. Well, as it went on, when I decided to frog it, I was about halfway done with the Sophie shawl. And if anyone has knitted before, it's a very simple pattern. It's been out there quite a bit, and it wasn't that I was hating the knit. I mean, it was relaxing knit. It's a lovely pattern, not complicated at all. But I'm not really a blue person anymore, I realized. And I started to think about, would I wear it? All that to say, I was thinking about this shawl, which was supposed to be more like a scarf, that I was going to make, and I was feeling kind of bad about wanting to frog it. I think because of the reason that I cast it on in the first place. I took a few days to think about that and to decide if it really made sense for me to continue with it. And in the end, I decided that casting on projects is sort of like writing, in the sense of, if you're an author, lots of times you start projects and you write, I don't know, maybe you even write a chunk of a book that you think is going to be really good, or maybe you write something that you think is going to be publication worthy and it turns out not being publication worthy. So the point of that is, sometimes we cast on and knit on projects or crochet on projects, and the purpose of that is simply to practice, or in this case, for me, it was a part of the grieving process. And then in the end, we decide, well, maybe I don't want that finished project. The joy and the purpose was all in the casting on and the learning something, or whatever it is. Maybe you just needed to work with those colors. And I really thought I was going to finish it and I was going to wear it, and it'd be a constant reminder of my friend. Well, after a while, I set it aside. So in December, I didn't really knit on it at all because I was doing Advent things. And then when I went back to it, I realized that it had fulfilled its purpose. And its purpose was not a finished object. It was simply a way to keep my hands busy as I worked through my feelings. Now, obviously, I haven't worked through all my feelings because it's still making me feel sad right now. But when I thought about it, I realized that it had served its purpose. And there were so many other things that reminded me of my friend. I did not need my blue shawl. So in the end, I decided to frog it because I probably wasn't going to wear it. Blue really isn't my most favorite color to wear. In fact, I find myself not wanting to do blue because I had so much blue in my life raising 4 boys that I really am attracted more to brighter colors, which is probably why if you look at my yarn line, it's a lot of bright colors. I don't dye super dark colors very often. But anyway, long story short, I decided to frog the Sophie shawl. So that was just a reminder to me, and I hope to you now as I'm chattering about this, that it's okay to frog things. So I think that when we cast on things, if you're a person that likes to cast on lots of things, but you don't necessarily finish them all, hey, don't worry about that. Maybe that project that you cast on was serving a different purpose than actually a finished object. And that realization was just sort of like, whoa, that's kind of deep. So anyway, that's a lot to say, and I'm getting too emotional, so we will move on. But I did frog that project. And then after that, I was like, I wonder if there are any other projects in my carryover that I don't really want to make anymore. Maybe they've served their purpose. And so the other one that I cast on was the So Sweet blanket. Now, if you've been around for a while, you will recall the So Sweet blanket and wrap is a pattern that I created and I put out with my Advent kit. I love the pattern. I do. I think it's a super mindless but relaxing sort of pattern. And I had this great idea that I was going to cast on a blanket where I held 2 strands double, and I had this beautiful thick DK weight blanket of all of the colors that I dyed this year. And I still think that's kind of a good idea. But as I started to think about it more, the idea of actually making the blanket was not bringing me joy. In the fact that, not that I didn't like the colors, I'm very proud of the kit that I put out. I'm very proud of the pattern, but I'm kind of over it. I started designing that pattern in January of 2023. And because it was my first pattern, I spent a lot of time in development trying to figure out the pattern, trying to do samples with different colors. And then I dyed all the colors, and I spent hours and hours dyeing and packaging and winding and making all those things to get ready for my lovely customers. And it was a wonderful thing, but I'm ready to move on. And it's not to say that I won't go back and make a So Sweet blanket sometime in that capacity as a DK weight blanket, because I still think that's a really fabulous idea and it will be super squishy. But instead, I decided that I'm going to take those mini skeins and I'm going to put them into a scrap blanket of sorts. Maybe it will be all my mini skeins. Maybe it will just be, I did have the idea that maybe I would start a Sweet Shop blanket by Laura Penrose, and I would pair the minis with the solid linen color that came with it. And I would make those 24 squares throughout the year because they're like a mitered square. I'll put a picture in of the Sweet Shop blanket if you haven't seen it. But I will make those squares, and then next year, whatever Advent maybe that I make for myself here that I whatever winter colorways. I might put in a square of Berry Fun Yarns. Maybe I'll add in the squares from any other advent, and it'll be kind of like a advent kit blanket, whether it's just mine or a compilation of lots of dyers. But anyway, the moral of this whole story is I'm yapping a lot, but I'm just trying to say that, don't let guilt decide for you whether or not you need to continue doing a project. Because, like I said, there's all sorts of reasons that we cast on a project, that we work on a project, and we get joy, we get therapy, we get so many things just from the process that we don't always need to have the finished object. So enough said on that, but I did frog, the Sophie shawl, and the So Sweet blanket. So I was feeling very virtuous, having finished 4 projects from 2023, plus frogged 2. I was ready to cast down all the things, and I sort of did. So let's move on into whips, and I will share what I have been working on. Okay, I'm coming to you from the future. I'm cutting in here. It is actually now Friday, January 26th, and I had a little snafu. My new microphone that I neglected to charge it properly, and it went out on me while I was talking about my whips yesterday, and the whole second half of the video had no sound at all. So I'm going to record that now for you. So let's start up where I left off. I believe it was somewhere I was explaining Lincoln's socks. So apologies if this is repetitive. I'm not exactly sure where I was, but these are the socks I am making for Lincoln. Lincoln is my 12-year-old son, and these are out of the Woolens and Nosh Targhee fingering. I had the distinct pleasure of meeting Michelle and getting to see her yarn firsthand last year at the Zombie Knit Apocalypse retreat. I knew I wanted to check out the yarn, but she was just right across from me in the marketplace. So it was like super for me to like run over and buy 5 or 6 skeins and then come back. So I did buy more than my fair share. But that being said, I love the base. It's very, it's just got a really nice feel to it. It has a beautiful stitch definition to it. The pattern that I'm using here is actually taken from the Georgia Socks, which is a pattern by Tracy Miller of the Grocery Girls. That pattern is for a shorty sock, and it has like some striping in it, and I think it has a special kind of like bullseye heel. But I am just doing the little pattern down the edge because I really enjoy just a little something of interest when I'm knitting around for a self-striping yarn. So these are, I can't remember what I said before, but these are actually 72 stitches around, knit on a US 0, which is 2mm needles. And I'm just using the Knit Picks double pointed. That is my preference for how I knit my socks. My son, although he's only 12, he has very wide feet, and so he can't fit in any of the other socks in our house. So I have 4 children. They're almost 21, 19, 16, 12, and then my husband. The older boys all have a 64 stitch circumference on a US 0. I do 60 stitches for my foot, and then none of them would fit him because he has a really high instep and he has a wider foot. So I'm hoping he tried this on so far, and it seemed to be nicer. So he will have just a slightly longer heel flap and also the 72 inches. So it looks really huge, but hopefully it will fit. And purple is one of his favorite colors. So that is that one. All right, let's see what else we have here. I'm a little out of sorts because I'm doing this in 2 sections here, but I have cast on a lot of things since I came to you last. I mentioned that I had finished some things, and so I was feeling very virtuous. The next thing I cast on, which The socks for Lincoln I cast on when I was at my knitting retreat on the 13th or 14th, I think I cast them on. And this one I also cast on that Sunday, and this is the Bounce Blanket by Tin Can Knits. It's sort of a finished one. Now, when you look at it, I'm going to kind of cover up my pattern stuff here. When you look at it, it has these white ridges. They're like garter ridges in between each color. This one is also a gradient. So mine is a gradient. It is my Yarn Ink Advent from this year. If you watched Vlogmas, you will have seen me unwrap it. But I did not want to interrupt my, what is it called? My fade. So I instead decided to use the 100-gram one for the edging. And I may try to put in one of these in the sequence where it fits in the color family. But instead, I am doing the same color in the garter ridge in between. So let me hold that up close so you can see the pattern a bit more. So I'm just about to finish the 6th color, and I actually decided I wanted to use up as much yarn as possible. So what I did is on the pattern, it gives you a recommended yardage for how much yarn you need for each section. And I think the DK minis that I had were approximately 49 yards. And I added together both the contrast garter ridge section that was in white in the pattern I showed you, and then the patterning section that was supposed to be in each color. And it was really close to 49 yards. And so I thought, I'm just going to try it. So I also added on one more repeat, which I think is 14 stitches, maybe. I added on one extra repeat to make my blanket a tad bit wider. And then I just took a chance. It was basically a very long swatch, and it worked. All I have left from each color, let me show you this, because this is really close to Yarn Chicken losing. This is all I have left, which comes up to be about 3 feet or 1 yard, 1 meter, something like that. So it's a very small amount. So it is perfect because I'm going to use up as much as possible, keeping my blanket as big as it possibly can. So yeah, like I said, I didn't want to break up the gradient or the fade, and I also didn't want to sacrifice the length of my blanket. So I'm really glad that my system and the way I was knitting it worked in conjunction with the gauge I was getting. And this is knit on a US 6, which I think is a 4 millimeter. Yeah, 4 millimeter needle. And yeah, I'm really enjoying that. It is a lot of fun. I'm not sure. I would kind of like to take it with me on our vacation next week, but I'm not sure. It's just kind of, it's in this big blanket or big bag. I'm not sure it's such a good thing to take with as a travel project. So we will see. Okay, the next 2 things I wanted to chat about is my pixie dust blanket and my heel toe do-si-do socks. So those are the other two more projects that I'm taking into 2024 from previous years. And I did work on both of them, but I only did maybe like 4 to 8 rows on each. So I'm not going to show you those this time around. Hopefully next time I'll have made more progress on them. But I did work on them a little bit. After that, I also cast on a pair of socks for myself. So I don't know what made me think of this, but I think I was going in my drawer and I was realizing that I didn't have very many shorty socks. I blew out, I got holes in some of my shorty socks last summer. Like one blew out on the base of it and one blew out in the toe. And they were my favorites. When I'm outside and it's warmer, I do sometimes, if I'm working in the garden, of course, I'm not wearing wool socks. I might put on shorty cotton socks. But if I'm, going for a walk or a hike or whatever, and I want a little bit more squish to my sock, I do like to wear shorty socks. So I thought, I'm going to cast on a pair of shorty socks to go to Florida. And this colorway had been in my pixie dust blanket because it is a lavender loon colorway. And originally I thought I was going to add in extra colors to that blanket, even though it was from an advent from last year, just to make it longer. But the colors just didn't mesh that I had that were the same sock weight and everything. But this is a beautiful color for a pair of socks. This is called Christmas Tree Farm, I believe. And I am about halfway into the first sock. And this is a Rose City roller. The pattern is Free on Ravelry. I believe it's Mara Catherine Bryner, maybe. I'll write it below. But you can see I did get a little bit of darker pooling on this side and the lighter on this side as I did the gusset. But I'm about halfway down the foot. I do 6.5 inches from the heel flap to where I begin my decreases on my toe. That's about the right size for my big size 11 foot. So I did have these grand plans that I was going to finish this in time before I left, and I made a big schedule of how I was going to do that. But of course, as is the case, I got lost in other projects that I was really enjoying, that were bringing me joy. So I will probably take these on the airplane with me, and maybe even Lincoln socks. It's easy to put 2 pair of socks in one project bag and kind of take that with on the go. So that's the Rose City rollers. And then I cast on, and I have made, actually yesterday when I recorded this the first time, I had only made 1 of these cute little hearts, and now I have 4 done. So I think I want to make 7, but let me give you a little background of what this is. This is called, it's very simple, it's just called Heart. And it's a little knitted pattern. It is by Green Dog Dolls, and it says it was written this year, so it's pretty recent. But it's just tiny little hearts. What I want them for is, if you watch Vlogmas, you will have seen that I had the tiny Christmas tree up in our dining fireplace area. Not dining area, it used to be our dining area, our fireplace area on the top of our bookshelves. And I really was enjoying the twinkly lights, and I didn't want to take the tree down. So I took off all the Christmas decorations, thought, oh, I'm going to make some little heart decorations. And I was just going to use, like make paper decorations, but then I saw this. So I am making little heart ornaments. So I have made 4. Here's 1, 2, 3, and numero 4. So yeah, so I am just hanging these on the tree. I think I'm going to make 7 if I have time to. So 3 more. They're very easy to make. The pattern says to use a 3.25 millimeter needle, and I actually used a 4. It is for DK weight. I used fingering held double, so that may be slightly thicker than the DK weight that is recommended in the pattern, but it just makes my hearts a little bit bigger. And I suppose you could do them with fingering weight. They would just be very tiny little hearts. But it is a free pattern, like I said, and you knit each side flat, and then you seam it together. So it's actually quite easy. And the great thing about it too is that there's kind of a lot of ends, from the cast on and the cast off, and you do one side of the heart, and then you cut it and you do the other side of the heart. But all of those ends you just stuff into the heart, and that's your stuffing. So that was what I did. I maybe had to add a little bit extra. I do keep the tails from my projects or things that I cut off to stuff things like this, because it's perfect. It's just perfect. And you don't have to have one of those big, huge bags of polyfill stuffing around your house. I just have a little dish with my little ends in. So those are my hearts. So I guess technically that's kind of a finished object, but I'm putting them in whips because I still want to make a couple more. But hopefully those will be done by the end of the weekend. Probably tonight I'll make a couple more. I'm thinking maybe a dark purple or a blue. I don't know. Maybe every year I'll make a couple more. So that is that. And then another thing I cast on, I am the cast on lady, is my husband's Louisiana sweater, which ironically I'm wearing today since I switched from yesterday's sweater. And this is a sweater by Petite Knit, and I made it last year. I actually used the same kind of yarn I'm using for my husband's, but a worsted weight yarn. This is Knit Picks Wool of the Andes non-superwash in Cadet. That's what this sweater is in. And he liked it so much, so I'm holding it double. The pattern is like for a bulky, let me see if it says on here, if it's bulky or chunky. It is, oh, it's hard to hear. It's hard to, it's just lists the yarn that they use. It doesn't say if it's worsted or not on here. But anyway, I'm holding 2 strands of not superwash, regular non-superwash wool of the Andes in the, you can see that, in the Mineral Heather colorway. And that's giving me the right gauge. So, but the difference, so my husband liked the shape of this sweater. It's a very simple raglan, but he didn't like the collar being so high like this. So what it is, the collar in the pattern, you knit for like, I don't know if it's like 5 or 6 inches, and then you fold it over to make a double folded collar. I can't even see it. Oops, sorry, I hope I'm not hitting my microphone. And then you sew the 2 together. For Dean, he just wanted a regular collar. So I just did, I think it's about 1.5 inches or 2 inches, and I didn't fold it at all. It's just a simple collar. So it'll be a real high kind of crew neck collar. And last night, yesterday I only had the collar bit done. And then last night I was working on setting up the increases, and I was having the hardest time reading the pattern. Okay, it was 10 o'clock at night, but I made the pattern before, and I don't remember it being challenging, but I was having issues with how the wording was and like how to set up the stitch markers and stuff for the increases. And all I have to say is it has been well over a year since I have knit a raglan garment. So I'm guessing that my brain just didn't remember. All that to say, I got it figured out, and I am working the raglan increases. I do still have to find some bigger stitch markers. You see my makeshift stitch markers here. This is knit. The pattern recommends a US 13 for the body and a US 11 for the neck and the edging. However, I generally am a loose knitter, so I get gauged by going down 2 needle sizes. So I am knitting it on a 9 for the collar and the ribbing, and a 11 for the body. But it's still big enough that I don't usually use this big of needles, and so I don't have any stitch markers that are that large. So I have to go hunting for a few different stitch markers, because the ones I have right now really aren't working. So, but yeah, so I didn't get very far. Not too exciting to show you, but it is coming along, and I'm excited to work on that just because I know he'll love it, and also it's such big needles. It's going to go really fast. We were kind of chatting last night about, I had him try on the neckline or the neck after I had it, because I was a little worried that it was going to be too close to his neck. And I did make him a sweater last year, at the beginning of last year. It was a sport weight sweater. Yeah, I think it was the flax I made. I'm pretty sure it was flax light. Anyway, he had all these preconceived notions that wool sweaters were going to be too warm, and he didn't want it to be very thick yarn. But then after I made this sweater, he wore it, and he wanted it to be thicker. And so we keep our house kind of cool in the winter. And so he was wearing a sweatshirt over his wool sweater, so then he realized, oh, I like the sweater you're making, and I want it thicker, and I want it. So, that's something, if you're making a sweater for someone, or even as you learn to make sweaters for yourself, don't expect to get it right the first time, because sometimes you just don't know what it is you want. That was the case with him when I made him the first sweater. So that's all good. He still wears that other one. It's a little dressier and a little more fitted. So this one's going to be more of like a oversized kind of sweatshirt-y kind of sweater. So got that on the needles. That's definitely coming with me to Florida. And what else do I have? The last two things I have to share with you are actually blankets. And that is both my granny square blanket and my DK Jelly Roll blanket. And the reason that I have been working on these partly is because I'm adding in some of my new colors that have come to the shop for Berry Fun Yarns. So stick with me a few more minutes if you are interested in seeing those more up close and personal, but I'm going to show you. So there are 6 colors in the new Love is in the Air collection, and those are available 6 in the 6 skein mini skein set. So we have this one here is called Lost in Your Eyes. So they're Valentine-y themed, but they're not traditional colors, and they're based on song lyrics or song titles that I was inspired by. So this one is called Lost in Your Eyes. So different shades of blue. If you look real close, you can see how some of the dye has split slightly. I'll show you it on a bigger skein. This one is Tainted Love. So we've got kind of deep pinky purples with blues mixed in. And I did not make either of these up on a granny square yet, but the other 4 I did. So we have, this one is just Sea Glass. That one does not have a song name, and that's pretty straightforward. It's kind of a tonal sea glass green. And then we have It Had to Be You. That's this one here. Kind of soft pinks and purples and creams. And that one crocheted up like this. And then we have I Really Love Your Peaches, which is dyed with madder root. And that one is just a very tonal orangey color. And then the last one is called Love Shack. And it's just a purple and orange. And that one crocheted up like this. So I crocheted these for my granny square blanket. And then after doing that, I went into my DK Jelly Roll. And I took the rest of the skeins and I started to add them to my blanket. So far I've only gotten in, you want to see what it looks like in garter stitch. This one here is the Love Shack. And then we have I Really Love Your Peaches. And then It Had to Be You. So I've got those 3 added in. Almost. I didn't quite finish the last one. And yeah, so I think that's so fun about mini skeins is that if you have multiple scrap blankets, I mean, ideally I would only have 2 just like this, where one of them is a blanket where I put in a set amount, like a square. I know a lot of people like to do miter squares or maybe a row or something like that. And then it's nice to have a blanket where you can just use the rest, an indefinite amount. So it doesn't have to be exactly the same and you're left with a teeny tiny scrap. You can just use it all up. So I really like that about the Jelly Roll blanket. And that is a blanket by Kay Jones of the Bakery Bears. If you've never seen that one before, I'll put a picture on so you can see that more completely of what the final project looks like. But I really love that blanket. It's very addicting. And I'm doing a DK weight, so I'm holding 2 strands double. So in this case, with these colors, I just held them together with themselves. I did not use it, another color with it to marl it. So yeah, so that is the end of my projects. And I have a mess here on my desk. But I do want to share just a few more quick things about the latest update in the shop that you might be interested in. So I told you about the mini skein sets. I did have some 8 skein sets, but those are all gone. I just have the 6 skein left. But I do have quite a few of the mini sock sets left. Now these contain a 50-gram large skein and a 20-gram mini skein. And I call them mini skein mini sock sets, because if you have average size feet, not super big, or you don't like super long legs on your socks, you can get a full pair of socks out of this. So we have a couple different options. This one is the Tainted Love with the Lost in Your Eyes colorway. So you can see that. It's really fun. And then we have the It Had to Be You with a lilac mini skein. And then we have the opposite of the other one with the large Lost in Your Eyes. I love this color. It is really hard as it shows up to show you the difference, but there's like a periwinkle bluish purple mixed in with the darker blues. And then if you look really close, let's see if you can see these little speckles here. So what I do, because as a natural dyer, you can't buy 200 different acid dyes of different shades of every color blue, every color green. You have to use the plants that you have. So for this one, I used indigo mixed with lac powder, which comes from a bug, to make sort of a periwinkle blue color. So this dark color here, that's kind of pinkish purple, that's what lac is when it's full force lac. But when I mix it as a liquid with really hot water, but it is a powder format. So occasionally some of the powder doesn't get mixed all the way, or maybe it does get mixed, but as it goes onto the yarn, it splits. And so then you get these really cool speckles or areas of that other color that come in. This one is a little more visible. This is a large skein of Lost in Your Eyes, and you can see the purpley blue here versus the darker blue up here. So I really love this new Lost in Your Eyes colorway. So anyway, Lost in Your Eyes with a Tainted Love mini. And then the last one, I also think I have a Heart Throb, which is an extra color that I came up with after I finished the collection. It's sort of pinky purple colorway with creamy whites, and that one I think I have paired with a lilac mini skein, but those aren't quite in the store yet. You can they should be by the end of the weekend though. But this is a Love Shack combined with kind of a one-of-a-kind colorway that's like grayish blue or grayish brown, and I'm calling it In the Doghouse. So there's some of those. And then there's full skeins of Tainted Love and Lost in Your Eyes in Berry Tough Sock. I was hoping to have more time to get the colors, more colors of these dyed on larger skeins and also in different bases, but as time would have it, it just didn't happen because, like I said, we're leaving to go to Florida next week, and I needed to wrap some things up so that I could get these in the shop at least before I left. So if you do wish to have one of these colors on a different base, I can certainly do a special order. Just send me an email at berryfunyarns@gmail.com, and I will work with you to get whatever it is that you need, because all of the colors in this 6 skein set are repeatable. In the Doghouse is not. And I don't know if I have something similar to lilac that I could dye for you, but yeah, so if those are interesting to you, head on over to the shop. One thing to note is that if you do plan or wish to get these before February 14th, if that matters, we are headed out on January 31st and we'll be gone until the 10th. So even though my in-laws will be here taking care of the farm and the kids, none of them are trained to do shipping. So I will not be shipping orders from the 31st through the 10th. When I get back, I will start up again. But so if you place anything through the evening of January 30th, probably like 8 o'clock, I'll check right before I go to bed. We leave very early in the morning on Wednesday, but I can get the packages ready and have my son drop them off at the post office if they come in at that time. But after that, you'll get a confirmation email, but they won't ship until the 11th of February. So Okay, all that to say, the last thing that will be going in the shop, hopefully this weekend as well, are some of these. I have a few of these kits left, and this is the So Sweet Wrap Kit. So if you recall, this is the pattern that I designed. I'll put a picture in because I don't have mine here. That came with the Advent Countdown from 2023. The pattern itself is either the blanket or the wrap. This kit is specifically 10-gram mini skeins, so it is for the wrap. The blanket takes 25 20-gram mini skeins instead of the 10 grams. But this one has 25 10-gram mini skeins and a 50-gram contrast main color to go with it, and then it also includes the pattern. So you have that all in there. It doesn't include any of the goodies that were in the Advent kit, just the yarn and the pattern. So there will be some of those in the shop as well. But yeah, other than that, I think that is about it. There will be more yarn coming. Oh, there is one more thing to tell you. If you recall, I think last episode, I talked about what I'm now calling the Snow Plow Cowl. This is a Surrey alpaca cowl that I made for my husband for when he blows snow, and I'm not going to put it on because it'll wreck up my microphone, but it's just an infinity cowl that you can double wrap and you can wear over your neck, and it's super cozy, very warm. It's a pretty simple pattern. However, I am going to be writing this up, and I do have at least one test knitter right now, but would love to have a couple more if anyone is interested. And it takes a full skein of fingering weight Surrey alpaca and a full skein of a fingering weight, like I'm using a sock yarn, an 80-20. You could use cashmere, you could use whatever you want, and then 2 50-gram contrast colors in fingering weight to use as the accent. If you're not a fan of Surrey or fluffy yarn, you could just use DK weight. You could also use just 2 fingerings held double as well. So, but yeah, that will be, kits for these will be coming to the shop probably late February, early March. I have most of them dyed up already. I'm going to have them in blue, green, pink, and purple. And one thing to note is if you are interested in test knitting for me, like I said, I have some of those kits already done, and I am offering them to my test knitters at 30% off the retail cost of them. So that's sort of my thank you for helping me test the pattern. So yeah, so that is that. I do hope to have more kits like this available because I know for a lot of people it's just easier when I put the colors together for you, especially when you can't see them in person, to try and match the colors. But always, if you have a question about a colorway you see online, if you're trying to match it with a different one, if you need me to confirm with you or send you a photo of them together, or even if you want to FaceTime to kind of look at them, always feel free to reach out via email, and I will for sure be happy to help you with that. We want to make sure that your colors match the project that you are working on. So I think that's it. Take 2. Hopefully the microphone, looks like my green light is still on, so hopefully it's all good, and this will be coming out to you yet tonight, or probably by the time it uploads, it'll be Saturday morning, the 27th. But thank you so much for watching and for coming back, or for sticking through this all if you are still here, and I look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks when I return from my vacation. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.